Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we are all taking step by step Srila Prabhupada's personal association on our way to Goloka Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. Live studios here in Radha Lane with all the Krishna's family members that have started to come here regularly and are fixing me up in this service. And all of you out there in cyberspace, we welcome you. Okay, without further ado, let's chant Sanatana Goswami's prayer to the Srimad-Bhagavatam and relish the taste that he has for hearing the Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandodita Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Mareka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kara hanamuncha gadachin mam premna rit kandayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Okay, continuing with Narada Muni's allegorical story of King Puranjana, told by him to King Prachinabarishat. Because when people are proud, they can't hear about themselves directly. They have to hear it through parables. That's why so many scriptures talk in parables, so that we can hear. Text 56. In that city, the material body, there are 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stores, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who is lord of the house. We read that. I remember because we had a joke about that. Text 57. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 objects of sense enjoyment, and the protector is the live air, which passes through the 9 gates. The 3 apartments are the chief ingredients, fire, water, and earth. The 6 families are the aggregate total of the mind and the 6 senses. Purport. The 5 senses that acquire knowledge are sight, taste, smell, sound, and touch. These act through the 9 gates, the 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 mouths, 2 nostrils, 1 genital organ, and 1 rectum. These holes are compared to gates in the walls of the city. The principal ingredients are earth, water, and fire, and the principal actor is the mind, which is controlled by the intelligence, buddhi. Text 58. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. Purport. The living entity enters the material creation with the aid of the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And thus his body is formed. Although the living entity is working from within, he is nonetheless unknown. The living entity enters the material creation, but because he is bewildered by the material energy, he appears to be hidden. The bodily conception of life is prominent because of ignorance, nava buddhyate. Intelligence is described in the feminine gender, but owing to her prominence in all activities, she is described in this verse as Adisha, the controller. The living entity lives by means of fire, water, and food grains. It is through the combination of these 3 that the body is maintained. Consequently, the body is called Prakriti, material creation. All the elements gradually combine to form flesh, bone, blood, and so on. All these appear as various apartments. It is said in the Vedas that the digested foods are ultimately divided into 3. The solid portion becomes stool, and the semi-liquid portion turns into flesh. The liquid portion turns yellow and is again divided into 3. One of these liquid portions is called urine. Similarly, the fiery portion is divided into 3, and one is called bone. Out of the 5 elements, fire, water, and food grains are very important. These 3 are mentioned in the previous verse, whereas sky, ether, and air are not mentioned. This is all explained in Bhagavad Gita 13:20. Prakritim purusham chaiva vidyanadi ubhavapi vikarang chagunang chaiva vidi prakriti sambhavan. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations in the modes of matter are products of material nature. Prakriti, material nature, and Purusha, the living entity, are eternal. When they both come in contact, there are different reactions and manifestations. All of them should be considered the results of the interaction of the 3 modes of material nature. Text 59. My dear friend, when you enter such a body, along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Now remember, this is the Brahmana that shows up when Vindarbi, the queen, Vindarbi, is lamenting over the loss of her husband in the forest. My dear friend, when you enter such a body, along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Purport. When a person becomes materially engrossed, he has no capacity to hear about spiritual existence. Forgetfulness of spiritual existence entangles a man more and more in material existence. Such is the result of sinful life. Various bodies are developed with the material ingredients, because of different types of sinful activities. King Puranjana assumed the body of a woman, Vaidarbhi, as a result of his sinful activities. Bhagavad Gita clearly says, Striyo Vaishas Tata Shudra, 932, that such a body is low-born. If one takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, he can be elevated to the highest perfection, even if he be low-born. One acquires lower births when one's spiritual intelligence is reduced. Text 60. Actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor is this man, Malayadwaj, your well-wishing husband, nor were you the actual husband of Puranjani. They were simply captivated in this body of 9 gates. Purport. In the material world, many living entities come into contact with one another and, increasing their attachment to a particular type of body, become related as father, husband, mother, wife, etc. Actually, every living entity is a separate individual being, and it is because of his contact with matter that he comes together with other bodies and becomes falsely related. False bodies create various associations in the name of family, community, society, and nationality. Actually, every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the living entities are overly engrossed in the material body. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, appears and gives instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita and Vedic literatures. The Supreme Lord gives these instructions because he is the eternal friend of the living entities. His instructions are important because by them the living entity can obtain liberation from bodily engagement. As water passes down a river, many straws and grasses are carried from the shore. These straws and grasses come together in the river's current, but when the waves toss this way and that, they are separated and carried somewhere else. Similarly, the innumerable living entities within this material world are being carried by the waves of material nature. Sometimes the waves bring them together and they form friendships and relate to one another on a bodily basis of family, community, or nationality. Eventually they are thrown out of association by the waves of material nature. This process has been going on since the creation of material nature. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Mitche Mayara Vashe Yat Che Beshe Katcha Habu Dububai Jeev Krishna Das E Vishwas Karle Tara Kuntukanai. My dear living entities, you are being carried away by the waves of material nature. Sometimes you are on the surface, sometimes you are being drowned. In this way your eternal life is being spoiled. If you simply catch hold of Krishna and take shelter of his lotus feet, you will once again get free from all the miserable material conditions. In this verse, the words Surit, well-wisher, and Tava, your, are very significant. One's so-called husband, relative, son, father, or whatever, cannot actually be a well-wisher. The only actual well-wisher is Krishna himself, as Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. Society, friendship, love, and well-wishers are all simply results of being packed in different bodies. One should know this well and try to get out of this bodily encagement into which one is thrown, birth after birth. One should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and return home, back to Godhead. Text 61. Sometimes you think yourself a man, sometimes a chaste woman, and sometimes a neutral eunuch. This is all because of the body, which is created by the illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually, both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. Now just try to understand this. I am trying to explain our factual position. Purport. The factual position of both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity is qualitatively one. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Spirit, the Super Soul, and the living entity is the individual Spirit Soul. Even though both of them are original spiritual identities, the living entity forgets his identity when he comes in contact with material nature and becomes conditioned. At such a time, he identifies himself as a product of the material nature. Because of the material body, he forgets that he is the eternal, Sanatana, part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in this way. Mamevangsho jiva loke, jiva bhutak sanatana. The word Sanatana is found in several places in Bhagavad Gita. Both the Lord and the living entity are Sanatana, eternal. And there is also a place known as Sanatana, beyond this material nature. The real residence of both the living entity and God is the domain of Sanatana, not this material world. The material world is the temporary, external energy of the Lord, and the living entity is placed in this material world because he wanted to imitate the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this material world, he tries to enjoy his senses to his best capacity. All the activities of the conditioned soul within this material world are perpetually taking place in different types of bodies. But when the living entity acquires developed consciousness, he should try to rectify his situation and again become a member of the spiritual world. The process by which one can return home, back to Godhead, is Bhakti Yoga, sometimes called Sanatana Dharma. Instead of accepting a temporary occupational duty based on the material body, one should take to the process of Sanatana Dharma or Bhakti Yoga so that he can put an end to this perpetual bondage in material bodies and return home, back to Godhead. As long as human society works on the basis of false material identification, all these so-called advancements of science and philosophy are simply useless. They only serve to mislead human society. Anda yatandaya upaniyamana. In the material world, the blind simply lead the blind. Text 62. My dear friend, I, the super soul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we are both spiritual. In fact, my dear friend, you are qualitatively not different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to consider this subject. Those who are actually advanced scholars, who are in knowledge, do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. Purport. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one. There is no factual difference between the two. The Mayavadi philosophers are again and again defeated by the illusory energy because they think that there is no separation between the super soul and the individual soul, or that there is no super soul. They are misled in thinking that everything is the super soul. However, those who are kavaya, learned scholars, actually know the facts. They do not commit such mistakes. They know that God and the individual soul are one in quality, but that the individual soul falls under the clutches of Maya, whereas the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the controller of Maya. Maya is the creation of the Supreme Lord, Maya Shrishta. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is the controller of Maya. Although one in quality with the Supreme Lord, the individual soul is under the control of Maya. Mayavadi philosophers cannot distinguish between the controller and the controlled. Text 63. As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies, so in our material condition, in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is no difference between God and the living entity. Shall I read that again? Pretty deep. As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies, so in our material condition, in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. Purport. Being affected by the conditioning of matter, Mayavadi philosophers cannot see the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entity. When the sun is reflected in a pot of water, the sun knows that there is no difference between himself and the reflected sun in the water. Those in ignorance, however, perceive that there are many small suns reflected in each and every pot. As far as the brilliance is concerned, there is brilliance both in the original sun and in the reflections. But the reflections are small, whereas the original sun is very large. Vaishnava philosophers conclude that the living entity is simply a small sample of the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Qualitatively, God and the living entities are one, but quantitatively, the living entities are small fragments of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is full, powerful, and opulent. In the previous verse, the Lord says, "My dear friend, you and I are not different." This non-difference refers to qualitative oneness, for it was not necessary for the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality, to remind the conditioned soul that he is not one in quantity. The realized soul never thinks that he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in every respect. Although he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in quality, the living entity is prone to forget his spiritual identity, whereas the Supreme Personality never forgets. This is the difference between lipta and alipta. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally alipta, uncontaminated by the external energy. The conditioned soul, however, being in contact with material nature, forgets his real identity. Therefore, when he sees himself in the conditioned state, he identifies himself with the body. For the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, there is no difference between the body and the soul. He is completely soul. He has no material body. Although the super soul, Paramatma, and the individual soul are both within the body, the super soul is devoid of designation, whereas the conditioned soul is designated by his particular type of body. The super soul is called Antaryami, and he is extensive. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Chetragyam chapimam vidi, sarva cheteshu bharata. O scion of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. The super soul is present in everyone's body, whereas the individual soul is conditioned in one particular type of body. The individual soul cannot understand what is taking place in another's body, but the Supersoul knows very well what is happening in all bodies. In other words, the Supersoul is always present in his full spiritual position, whereas the individual soul is prone to forget himself. Nor is the individual soul present everywhere. Generally, in his conditioned state, the individual soul cannot understand his relationship with the Supersoul. But sometimes, when he is free from all conditional existence, he can see the real difference between the Supersoul and himself. When the Supersoul tells the conditioned soul, "You and I are one and the same," it is to remind the conditioned soul of his spiritual identity as being qualitatively one. In the third canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3:28-40, it is said, "Ito mukhad vispulingad dhumat vapi swasambhavad apyat mavinna bimatad yatagni pritag ulmukad." Fire has different features. There is flame, the sparks, and the smoke. Although they are one in quality, there is still a difference between the fire, the flame, the spark, and the smoke. The living entity becomes conditioned, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is different because he does not become conditioned at any point. In the next verse, Bhagavatam 3:28-41, it is stated, "Atma yata pritag drashta Bhagavan Brahmasangitaha." Atma is the individual soul, as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of everything. Although both are spirit, there is always a difference. In the Shruti it is also said, "Yatagne chudra vispulinga vyuchedanti." Just as sparks manifest in a large flame, in a large fire, similarly the small individual souls are present in the big spiritual flame. In Bhagavad Gita 9:4, Lord Krishna says, "Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham te shravastitaha." All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Although all living beings are resting in him, as small fiery sparks rest in a large flame, both are differently situated. Similarly, in the Vishnu Purana 122:56, it is said, "Ekadesha stitagsya agner jyotsna vistarini yata parasya brahmanaksha tis tadedam akilam jagat." Fire is situated in one place, but it distributes heat and light. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is distributing his energies in different ways. The living entity is but one of these energies, marginal energy. The energy and the energetic are one in one sense. I'll read that again. The energy and the energetic are one in one sense, but they are differently situated as energy and the energetic. Similarly, the Satchidananda form, confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, is different from that of the living entity in both his conditioned and liberated states. Only atheists consider the living entity and the personality of Godhead equal in all respects. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, "Mayavadi bhashya shuni le haya sarvanash." If one follows the instruction of Mayavadi philosophers and believes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual soul are one, his understanding of real philosophy is forever doomed. Text 64. In this way, both swans live together in the heart. When the one swan is instructed by the other, he He is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of his material attraction. Purport. Here it is clearly stated, Hankso, Hanksena Pratibodhita. The individual soul and the super soul are both compared to swans, Hanksa, because they are white or uncontaminated. One swan, however, is superior and is the instructor of the other. When the inferior swan is separated from the other swan, he is attracted to material enjoyment. This is the cause of his fall down. When he hears the instructions of the other swan, he understands his real position and is again revived to his original consciousness. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna comes down, avatar, to deliver his devotees and kill the demons. He also gives his sublime instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita. The individual soul has to understand his position by the grace of the Lord and the spiritual master, because the text of Bhagavad Gita cannot be understood simply by academic qualifications. One has to learn Bhagavad Gita from a realized soul. Tadvidi panipatina pariprashnena sevaya upatikshanti te jnanam jnaninas tatvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Bhagavad Gita 4:34. Thus one has to select a bona fide spiritual master and become enlightened to his original consciousness. In this way, the individual soul can understand that he is always subordinate to the supersoul. As soon as he declines to remain subordinate and tries to become the enjoyer, he begins his material conditioning. When he abandons this spirit of being an individual owner or enjoyer, he becomes situated in his liberated state. The word swasta, meaning situated in one's original position, is very significant in this verse. When one gives up his unwanted attitude of superiority, he becomes situated in his original position. The word tad vyabhicharana is also significant, for it indicates that when one is separated from God due to disobedience, his real sense is lost. Again, by the grace of Krishna and Guru, he can be properly situated in his liberated position. These verses are spoken by Srila Narada Muni, and his purpose in speaking them is to revive our consciousness. Although the living entity and the supersoul are one in quality, the individual soul has to pursue the instruction of the supersoul. That is the state of liberation. Text 65. My dear King Prachinibarhi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, is celebrated to be known indirectly. Thus I have described the story of Puranjana to you. Actually, it is an instruction for self-realization. Purport. There are many similar stories in the Puranas for self-realization. As stated in the Vedas, Paroksha Priya Eva Hi Devaha. There are many stories in the Puranas that are intended to interest ordinary men in transcendental subjects, but actually these refer to real facts. They are not to be considered stories without a transcendental purpose. Some of them refer to real historical facts. One should be interested, however, in the real purport of the story. Indirect instruction is quickly understandable for a common man. Factually, the path of Bhakti Yoga is the path of hearing directly about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. But those who are not interested in hearing directly about the activities of the Lord or who cannot understand them, can very effectively hear such stories and fables as this one narrated by Narada Muni. The following are some of the allegorical usages in this chapter. Adeshakari, the actions resulting from sinful activities. Agastya, the mind. Amatya, the governor of the senses, the mind. Arbudha, various types of Shravana and Kirtana of the Supreme Lord's name, quality, form, and so on. Ari, impediments like disease. Bhoga, enjoyment. Herein the word refers to enjoyment in spiritual life. Britya, the servants of the body, namely the senses. Dravida Raja, devotional service or a person eligible to act in devotional service. Dwara, the doors of the body, such as the eyes and ears. Griha, home. For spiritual cultivation, one requires an undisturbed place or the good association of devotees. Idmavaha, the devotee who approaches the spiritual master. Idma refers to wood that is taken to burn as fuel for a fire. A brahmachari is supposed to take this idma to ignite the fire used in performing sacrifices. By spiritual instruction, a brahmachari is trained to ignite a fire and offer oblations in the morning. He is supposed to go to the spiritual master to take lessons on transcendental subject matter, and the Vedic injunction is that when approaching the spiritual master, one must carry with him fuel to perform yagyas, or sacrifices. The exact Vedic injunction is as follows. Tad vijnanartam sagarum ebabhigach chet samitpani shotriyam brahmanishtam. Vaisheshika Prabhu, in the book Our Family Business, he likens to the wood that the brahmachari is carrying 2 books, which are made out of wood, for the sacrifice. Book distribution. The supreme yajna. To learn transcendental subject matter, one must approach the spiritual master. In doing so, he should carry fuel to burn and sacrifice. The symptom of such a spiritual master is that he is expert in understanding the Vedic conclusion, and therefore he constantly engages in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mundaka Upanishad 1-2-12. By serving such a bona fide spiritual master, gradually a conditioned soul becomes detached from material enjoyment and invariably makes progress in spiritual realization under the direction of the spiritual master. Those who are misled by the illusory energy are never interested in approaching a spiritual master to make life successful. Jaya, intelligence. Jirna Sarpa, the fatigued air of life. Kalakanya, the invalidity of old age. Kama, a high fever. Kulachala, the place where there is no disturbance. Kutumbani, intelligence. Madhirekshana. Madhirekshana refers to one whose eyes are so attractive that one who observes them becomes maddened by her. In other words, Madhirekshana means a very, very beautiful young girl. According to Jiva Goswami, Madhirekshana means the personified deity of bhakti. Very nice. If one is attracted by the bhakti cult, he becomes engaged in the service of the Lord and the spiritual master, and thus his life becomes successful. Vaidarbhi, the woman, became a follower of her husband. As she left her comfortable home for the service of her husband, a serious student of spiritual understanding must give up everything for the service of the spiritual master. As stated by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasadaha. If one wants actual success in life, he must strictly follow the instructions of the spiritual master. By following such instructions, one is sure to make rapid progress in spiritual life. This statement by Vishwanath Chakrabarti is in pursuance of the following injunction from Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. Yasya Devi Parab Bhaktir Yatad Devi Tata Gurau Tasyai Te Katitak Yartha Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. In the Chandogya Upanishad it is said, Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who approaches a bona fide spiritual master can understand everything about spiritual realization. Malayadvaj, a nice devotee who is like sandalwoods. Panchala, the 5 sense objects. Parichjada, the total aggregate of the senses. Paurajana, the 7 elements that constitute the body. Pautra, patience and gravity. Prajwara, a kind of fever called Vishnujwara. Pratikriya, counteracting agents such as mantras and medicines. Purapalaka, the life air. Putra, consciousness. Shainaka, the condition of threefold miseries. Sapta Sutta, the 7 sons, namely hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping the deity, and becoming a servant of the Lord. Saurya, endeavor. Sutta, the son of Vaidarbhi, or in other words, one who is somewhat advanced in fruitive activities and who comes in contact with a devotee spiritual master. Such a person becomes interested in the subject matter of devotional service. Vaidarbhi, the woman who was formerly a man but who took birth as a woman in his next life because of too much attachment to woman. Dharba means kusha grass. In fruitive activities or karmakandya ceremonies, one requires kusha grass. Thus, Vaidarbhi refers to one who takes birth in a family of karmakandya understanding. However, if by karmakanda activities one by chance comes in contact However, if by karmakanda activities one by chance comes in contact with a devotee, as Vaidarbhi did when she married Malayadvaj, his life becomes successful. He then pursues the devotional service of the Lord. The conditioned soul becomes liberated simply by following the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master. Vidarbha Rajasingha, the best of persons who are expert in fruitive activities. Birya, one who has mercy. Yavana, the servant of Yamaraj. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 28th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life. I was thinking during this last section that when I first came back this last time, there was one person who came to see me and was thinking about finding a spiritual master, and came with another person. And the other person made the question, you know, Prabhupada's books are very repetitive. He's saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I looked at him and I said, does that mean that you want not to hear those things? Or what? I said, the reason that these things are repeated over and over again is so that our understanding of them can be, what's the word? Thorough and fixed. both thorough and fixed. Because time is so powerful that if we don't hear these things every day and read Prabhupada's books every day, then we will forget. As we do. Whenever we stop reading these books, we forget. That's the nature of time. It's Krishna. Who can overcome time? No one. Right? So when I said that to him, he went, "Oh, thank you. That's right." He said, when you don't like to hear something that's true, even if it's said to you over and over again, that means there's some resistance in you to the truth. Okay. We'll stop there. That was a very deep chapter, very deep instructions. And I've got to stop at 7:45 today, so we've got 20 minutes. And here we have the mic, the open mic. For those who want to reflect, ask, further discuss, whatever. Hare Krishna. Wow, it's quite a quiet audience today. Everybody's very thoughtful and deeply absorbed. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yes, Sarva.
Can you explain, I think Vaisheshika Prabhu gives a comparison of the brahmachari offering firewood to the book distribution or something like that. Can you explain that?
Would it be a little more deeply? Yeah. Well, the word means firewood, and the significance is that the brahmachari is supposed to go out and collect firewood and bring it to the guru, who then ignites the fire, right? And in this way, the brahmachari, the disciple, learns how to participate in the sacrifice, which the spiritual master is performing. So, Srila Prabhupada came and he wrote these books and then gave us the fire of the Yugadharma sacrifice, which his spiritual master called the Brihat Mridanga. You go out and do Sankirtan playing a mridanga, and people can hear it for a certain number of yards away. But when you distribute the books, they go out and they go everywhere, and they stay with the person. And therefore, Vaisheshika Prabhu came up with this brilliant, while we were writing this book together, he came up with this brilliant idea that the books are like the disciple carrying the firewood to the spiritual master to light the fire of sacrifice, assisting Srila Prabhupada in the fire of the Brihat Mridanga, the supreme sacrifice in Kali Yuga, to help other people.
Papers made out of wood.
Yes, the paper is made out of wood.
Good.
Huh?
Good.
Brilliant. A brilliant person. And we should do this, now we have all you nice, strong, youthful energy, brahmacharis. You know what Prabhupada told us? He said, you just give me your youth and distribute these books. And then you can go at the end of your life, and then you can meditate in ecstasy on the books. I mean, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't read the books. We should read the books all the time, but we should, not just take this process just for ourselves. We should give it to others. When we give it to others, it becomes alive. It's activated in our hearts. And then we can understand. That's what it means by Bhakti Mama Mijanati. Yavanyaschasmi tatpataha. You can only understand Krishna in truth by performing pure devotional service. And pure devotional service is done not just because you like to do something, but because Krishna wants you to do it and he likes it. And then you do it, and then your heart from inside becomes inspired by him. And then the knowledge is revealed from within your heart. We heard the verse, Yasadevi Parabhaktir Yatate Tasyarte Tatitakyat Prakashante Mahatmanaha. One who has full faith in Krishna and in the spiritual master, to him, to such a person, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are revealed within the heart without separate endeavor. Yes, Bhakta Horge.
I just had a question. A quick question is, would it be possible to perform pure devotional service without taking on a spiritual master?
No. Because by definition, pure devotional service is anyabhilashita shunyam karma anavritam. It is for the pleasure of Krishna. It's not that you can make up what devotional service is. You know, the devotional service is made up of components or prerequisites. And one of them is that it is authorized by superior spiritual authority, and the other that it is done for the pleasure of Krishna, which means the activity that you do has to be something that Krishna wants you to do. Then all those together, when those qualities are there, characteristics are there, then it's pure devotional service. If it's tinged, there it is, the conch shell of Maya, confirming this point. If it's tinged with something from my own personal benefit, then it's not pure devotional service. And it cannot satisfy us. Because it cannot satisfy Krishna. Because our satisfaction and Krishna's satisfaction are linked eternally. That's who we are. We're eternal servants of Krishna, and to be an eternal servant of Krishna means to eternally want to please the senses of Krishna. So you can't be a Mayavadi and perform pure devotional service. Because a Mayavadi thinks that Krishna's senses are Maya, and that pure devotional service is Maya, a temporary activity of the senses, just like material sense gratification. That's why our mind and heart have to be purified by the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And when our hearts are purified, then we're inclined to want to know. We're inclined to hear and chant about Krishna, his instructions, his pastimes, etc., etc. So yes, it's required that you get the service from the spiritual master, even the mantra from the spiritual master, because although the mantra is absolute, but he's a person, you know, and he's what's the word? It's in the 9th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Krishna says, or 11th canto. It's either 9th or 11th canto. Krishna says, I don't remember the Sanskrit, sorry, but he says, I've decided to purify the earth by the dust from the lotus feet of my pure devotees. So that's the way it's organized by Krishna. It's like a spiritual law of nature. You know, just like gravity is a law of nature, you know. I've dropped this, and what's going to happen? It's going to fall down. It's not going to stay there. Law of nature. So like that, the law of nature is that Krishna, he empowered or deputized his pure devotees to give pure devotional service to the world. Therefore, by personal experience, I've said this before, forgive me, those of you who have heard this before. But I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. You can listen to it if you want to. December 2nd, 1973, in Los Angeles. It was either 2nd or 3rd. Anyway, that's where you can listen to 2 lectures, or 2 morning walks. Anyway, I asked Srila Prabhupada whether the pure devotee is more merciful than Krishna. And after he asked a couple of times what I said, because I was speaking very low voice, it was hard to talk in front of Prabhupada. And then he finally turned, he stopped. And then sometimes in the morning walk, if you got his attention, he'd stop. And he turned around and looked me right in the eye, just this far away. And he smiled really big and he said, "Oh yes." And I like practically merged into the ground at the moment. And then he talked about how Arjuna wanted to save them and Krishna wanted to kill them, and how Durvasa Muni had insulted Maharaj Ambarish, and Ambarish was so humble, and he stood there waiting for the shooter son Chakra to chase Durvasa Muni all over the universe, and finally ended up going to Vishnu himself and asking for mercy and forgiveness. And Vishnu said, "Sorry, you offended my pure devotee. You've got to get his forgiveness. Then you'll be forgiven. Then the Sudarshan Chakra will stop from burning you to death." Anyway, he told me all these stories. And then what was even more ecstatic was when we got back to the temple, in the class, Prabhupada carried on with that theme in the class, which I was just, by that time I was so blissed out, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what he said. I'll have to listen to the lecture again. But it was very, very pleasing because I pleased him with that question. He liked that question. It allowed him to preach the details of, how important the devotees are and how pleasing the devotees are to Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yes, Sarva.
Some days ago in the 4th canto, in one of the purports, Prabhupada told the story of liquid beauty. And I was thinking that it may be true, but it could be an allegory, kind of serving a similar function of, through a story, bringing home a...
Of course it is. Of course it is. But at the same time, it's true because, our bodies are, what's inside makes it, when what's inside goes out, then it doesn't look as attractive. So it's both. We have a question online. Shweta Dweep. Shweta Dweep. Shweta Dweep from Houston? Why are you over here?
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, could you please explain the analogy of the mirror in verse 63? Quote, as a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies.
Yes, it means when you're standing and looking at a mirror, if you're just looking at the form in the mirror, then you don't see your own form. But a person standing over there will see both forms. So, Shweta Dweep, complete the analogy. Complete the analogy. This is your penance for not being here. Are you going to write it, or I guess you can't say it? Can you write it? Complete the analogy. Like if you look at yourself in a dream, you can see your head being cut off in a dream. Theoretically it's possible. I've never seen my head cut off in a dream, but I suppose if you had bad enough karma, you could see yourself, your head cut off in a dream. So like that, the super soul is there with you, but you can't see him. Just like the eye is directing the hand, but the hand can't see the eye. The hand can't know where to go with that direction of the eye, but the hand can't see the eye. So the super soul is directing us even though we can't see him. The eyelid is the closest thing to the eye, but you can't see it. Shweta Dweeb, come on. Cooperate. Anyway, I hope I answered your question. And now, I am going to run away. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Narada Muni ki jai. And the Brahmana who represents Krishna, the Super Soul, ki jai. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. We'll see you tomorrow night, same place, same station, same time. Hare Krishna.